It finally sank in one night while I was standing at the sink, scraping dried cheese off a baking tray at 2 in the morning. I still had my deli shirt on, name tag hanging by a single thread. The whole house was dead quiet, except for the thud of the dryer upstairs and the twins' videos echoing through the air vents. I had just dropped them off from practice, Owen's sweaty gym bag still rolling around in the trunk. Now I was back home, cleaning dishes no one else seemed to notice. And that was when it hit me. Hard. I wasn't their brother. I was their unpaid help. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. My name's Carter. I was 27, still stuck in Cleveland, grinding through back-to-back shifts. Mornings at a grocery deli in Old Brooklyn and overnights stocking shelves at a dollar store off Lorraine Avenue. Every bit of spare change I made ended up in a glass jar on the counter labeled household fund, like I was some kind of walking cash machine wearing a greasy apron. Before we get into it, tell me in the comments which city or country you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. Thanks for being here. Now, back to it. My parents, Linda and Gary, used to brag that I was their built-in parent. They said it with a smile, like it was something I should be proud of. "We don't know what we'd do without you, Cart," Mom would say, usually while I was hauling Maya to cheer practice in Tremont or driving Owen to junior varsity basketball in Shaker Heights. Then I'd come home to a mountain of laundry, a sink full of crusted pans, and a to-do list made up entirely of things nobody else cared enough to fix. When I asked why it was always me folding towels or changing light bulbs, Mom said, "It's just easier if you do it. You do it right." She also forgot to switch a few bills out of my name. The phone plan? In my name. The Netflix account? Mine. The electric bill? You guessed it. Mine too. All for the discount, she claimed. But when the late notices started piling up, it was my credit score that took the hit. One day I found a bright red envelope buried under a stack of pizza coupons. I asked her about it. She barely looked up and said, "Oh, that one? Yeah, I meant to pay it. You've got better credit anyway. Ours is wrecked." Gary ran what he called a small but honest landscaping business. Honest might have been stretching it. Some nights around 9 o'clock, he'd toss me his truck keys and tell me to go pick up a leaf blower he'd forgotten at the shop. If I mentioned I was low on gas, he'd grunt and say, "Figures." Once when I told him I wanted to try boxing classes over in Lakewood, cheap ones, nothing fancy, he barked, "We need that money for bills." Mom chimed in right after. Family comes first. Sure, their version of family. In their world, family meant the twins got first pick of everything. The fridge was stocked with oat milk and bran cereal for Maya, name brand protein powder for Owen. Me? I got the discount bin bananas and off-brand macaroni. Nobody kept track of my schedule. That was my job. I carried it crumpled in my pocket with deli slips and handwritten IOUs for gas. The kitchen calendar was sacred, colorful ink for every one of the twins' games and practices. My double shifts, my overnight weekends, not even worth a line. And don't get me started on the memories. There wasn't a single baby book for me. No framed photos before the twins were born. Once I asked about my birth story. Mom just smiled in that strange, distant way and said, "You were a miracle." Then the twins came along, and it felt like I'd been the warm-up act before the real show began. One day, I needed my Social Security card for some job paperwork. The issue date said I was around 4 years old when it was made. Odd. Then I checked my childhood medical records. None of my vaccinations were from Cuyahoga County. They were listed from a clinic in Youngstown, Ohio. That didn't make any sense. Up on the laundry shelf was this old plastic folder labeled insurance and taxes. One afternoon, while reaching for dryer sheets, I noticed a paper sticking out. The top line said just one word, decree, in bold letters. I didn't touch it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. A few days later, Mrs. Sullivan, our neighbor across the street, stopped me on the sidewalk. "You were so quiet when you first came to live with them," she said, then froze, like she had said too much. And the cherry on top? Every time I made something good for dinner, like actually good, Mom would wag her finger and say, "Don't get fancy. Save that for people who pay your wage." Then she'd laugh like it was a joke. So yeah, that was life. Built-in parent, built-in chauffeur, built-in maid, just not their child. That's when I started volunteering at the Ho Community Kitchen every Monday and Wednesday night, right after my deli shift. Nobody there cared what car I drove or how exhausted I looked. They just handed me an apron, pointed to a sink, and said, "You good?" I chopped onions until my eyes stung, stirred pots of chili big enough to swim in, and helped serve plates to folks who actually said thank you and meant it. For once, I could breathe. No crowded calendar full of someone else's plans, no fake family first talk, just heat, sweat, and food that belonged to me. Mr. Morales ran the kitchen like a drill sergeant, but a calm one. He never shouted, he just watched, sharp as a hawk. On my third night at the community kitchen, I leaned over a pot of chili and added just a touch of vinegar. It had tasted flat, and that tiny splash brought it to life. Mr. Morales noticed. He did not say a word at first, just watched. Then he leaned close and said, "You've got a real sense for flavor, kid. I'll cover your certification classes if you show up and put in the work." I just nodded. Couldn't trust my voice right then. Felt like if I tried to speak, the lump in my throat might choke me. The next evening, he handed me a beat-up serve-safe manual, pages bent, scribbles running through the margins. Said he'd help me study it and teach me basic knife work, but I'd have to carry my own weight. Then he looked me square in the eyes and told me, "Stop wasting your energy arguing with people who value your effort but not your future." That hit me like a brick. I hadn't realized how trapped I'd been until he said it out loud. I told my parents about it at dinner, already bracing for the reaction. Still, I tried. "Mr. Morales wants to sponsor me for kitchen training," I said. "It's only 2 nights a week. I can still drive the twins to practice. I just need a little flexibility." Mom didn't even lift her eyes from her phone. "Who's going to drive them when you're in class?" she asked. "This house doesn't run by itself." Dad jumped in before I could answer. "Don't start dreaming big, Cart. Just keep your job at the deli. That's steady money. Be reliable. That's what matters." Not one of them asked who Morales was or what I wanted to learn. They just shut it down like I was talking nonsense. The very next morning, my deli manager stopped me before I could clock in, said someone had called anonymously, claiming I'd been sneaking meat home after hours, cold cuts and rotisserie chickens. It was ridiculous. I laughed it off, but it lingered. He said he had to note it just in case. That night, Morales himself came by the deli. Didn't warn me, just walked in for a coffee. While I bagged his order, he leaned in and murmured, "If anyone asks, I'll vouch for you. You're clean. Don't let them scare you." His tone was steady, same as always, but it was the first time in years someone had my back without needing a reason. A week later, I drove to the community college, not even to enroll, just to find out where to start. That's where I met Melissa Vargas. She worked the evening shift at the registrar's window, said she was a paralegal finishing her own certificates. She had this calm, patient voice, never talked down to me once. When I told her I was trying to register and needed to know what to bring for a real ID, she asked for my birth certificate number. I said I only had a photocopy. She frowned slightly and said, "If the original's lost, you'll need to order a certified copy. Start early. You'll thank me later. Some counties move slow." Then she typed something into the computer and looked up. "Are the utilities and the phone plan actually yours," she asked, "or just in your name?" "Both," I said, but my stomach twisted a little when I did. "If other people use those accounts and they fall behind," she said quietly, "that's going to hurt your credit, not theirs. Just be careful, okay?" She didn't say it like a warning, more like she'd already been through something similar and saw where I was headed. That night, I tore through the junk drawer looking for my ServeSafe test notice. Morales said it should have arrived by now. Between the expired coupons and a dead phone cable, I found the envelope unopened. Test date, 3 days ago. I brought it into the kitchen, held it up, and said, "You check the mail every day. Why didn't you give me this?" Mom glanced at it, shrugged. "Must have slipped through. Don't blame me if you're not organized." Then she went right back to stirring her tea, calm as ever. I rebooked the exam myself. Morales covered the fee again, but said it would be the last time. "Show up next round," he told me, "or don't bother." That weekend at church, a quiet guy named Ethan, always sat a couple pews up, caught me in the parking lot. Said he'd heard I was trying to start a culinary program. I must have looked dead tired because he didn't ask questions. Just said, "You can crash on my couch if you need a break. Stay till you find your footing. We'll figure it out." I almost said no out of habit, but I didn't. I nodded and said, yeah, that might help. Later that night, past 1 in the morning, I was dragging the trash out to the curb. A sink full of cold pans waited behind me. The twins' uniforms were still spinning in the dryer, and someone had left an empty milk jug on the counter like it would magically refill itself. My hands were wet, shoulders stiff from hauling and driving all day. Something inside me just broke. I said it out loud, quiet but sharp, right there in that buzzing kitchen under the fridge light. I'm not your built-in babysitter. I'm done paying for this house. The next morning, I packed 2 duffel bags. One duffel bag held my work shirts, socks, and the best pair of boots I owned. The other carried my old chef's knife wrapped in a towel, a binder full of pay stubs, and the worn serve-safe manual Mr. Morales had given me. I waited until the house emptied out before making a move. Mom was off at her hair appointment, Dad was out landscaping, and the twins were still at school. By 1 o'clock, I shut the front door behind me. No note, no explanation, no looking back. Ethan had already cleared a corner in his basement for me. The place sat near the RTA with a sliver of beach view if you stood just right. Concrete floor, one-space heater, a twin mattress on a metal frame that creaked when I set my bags down. No window, but the air felt clean, like freedom in its simplest form. "Pay me when you can," Ethan said, handing over a spare key. I thanked him, and I meant it. That night, I sat cross-legged on that mattress, breathing so deeply it almost hurt. It took a few minutes before my thoughts could catch up to the quiet. The next morning, I made my first move. I went straight to a credit union and opened an account in my name only. Started the Real ID process, got my new routing number, and called the deli to switch my direct deposit. Then I logged into the phone plan I'd opened when I was 18. Because, as Mom once said, you're the only one with decent credit card. I ported my own number to a prepaid plan. The other 3 lines, Mom, Dad, and Maya, were overdue by $127. Owens had already been cut off last month, and he'd started his own prepaid, so he was off the account. Didn't matter who ran up the bill. On paper, it was mine. I logged out, closed the account, and canceled the family Netflix subscription while I was at it. Then I scheduled the electric service to come out of my name at the end of the billing cycle and picked up a small prepaid hotspot for my classwork. A few hours later, Mom texted, "The TV stopped working. Fix it." I didn't reply. That night, Dad left a voicemail. No greeting, just family comes first. Your tips are household money, and you know that. I stared at the screen while it played, then set my phone to block unknown numbers. The next day, I walked into Mr. Wright Morales' kitchen and said, "I'm good to make every class from now on. No more rides, no more house stuff." He didn't ask questions or smile, just nodded, handed me a binder filled with safety drills, knife diagrams, and the week's schedule. "Show up, do the work, no excuses," he said. That was all I needed. That evening, Melissa stopped by the kitchen. She saw me scribbling hours and grocery costs on the back of a receipt, but didn't tease me for it. Instead, she opened her laptop and said, "I made a budget template you can copy. Rent, food, class fees. Start simple and keep records, especially for anything tied to your old accounts, just in case." I didn't argue. I nodded and took the flash drive she handed over. It felt like someone tossing a life raft into deep water, not asking if I could swim, just trusting I'd grab it. That first week away from home, I slept straight through the night for the first time in years. No footsteps above me asking for one more ride. No laundry dumped at midnight. No grocery runs because someone forgot cereal. Just silence. One night, I even slept through my alarm. Missed breakfast. But for once, I didn't feel guilty about it. Each morning after, there was still this short stretch, 5 minutes maybe, where guilt crept in right after I woke up. Not because I missed them, but because I knew exactly how they'd twist it. You abandoned the family. You're ungrateful after everything we did. I could hear their voices in my head before my feet even touched the floor. But the moment I stood, pulled on my work shirt, and looked at the calendar with only my name written on it, that weight slipped off. My shoulders eased. The guilt faded. Ethan never pried. He kept to himself, worked nights at a medical supply warehouse. Every few evenings, he'd knock on the basement door and come down with leftovers or just to sit for a few minutes before heading out. Never judged, never asked. You finding your footing?" he asked once. "Yeah," I said, "finally." Morales ran a tight kitchen, no room for sloppiness. He'd correct my knife angles, quiz me on food temperatures, and make me taste before I seasoned, not after. It wasn't school. It was sharper, stricter, and every second counted. Respect the line, he'd say. You don't respect it. It won't respect you back. I took that to heart. One night, I texted Melissa a screenshot of my new budget. No emojis, no extra words, just bills paid, groceries covered, no past dues, still on track. She replied 5 minutes later, "That's what we call an adult move. Proud of you." I sat there on that creaky twin mattress, eating leftover rice and beans from the kitchen, staring at her message longer than I needed to. It wasn't the words that got to me. It was that, for the first time, I actually believed them. I was on my 15-minute break, sitting on the curb behind the deli with a lukewarm cup of coffee and a highlighter, trying to cram for my ServSafe exam. That's when Mom's minivan came flying into the lot. She parked crooked, like it was an emergency, and jumped out before the engine even stopped. Her eyes were already glassy. "Cardi, just hear me out," she said, like she hadn't ignored my messages for the last 2 weeks. I stood up but didn't speak, just waited. She rubbed her temple, sighing. "The phone bill's a mess. Your sister's line keeps dropping. I need you to put it back under your name, just the account, just for the credit score. It won't hurt you." "It's already hurting me," I said, "and no, I'm not doing it." She blinked, hard. "You're acting like none of this means anything, like this family didn't raise you." "I'm not your bank," I said quietly, "and I'm not coming back." Her face tightened, but she didn't argue. She just hugged her purse close, turned around, and walked off. When I went to clock back in, I patted my jacket pocket, and my keys were gone. I tore the place apart. The curb, my bag, the break table, even the stockroom floor. Nothing. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Oh, I grabbed them by accident," she said, cheerful like it was nothing. "They were just sitting there." "You made me late," I said. She laughed lightly. "Well, I didn't know they were important today." But they were. I missed my test window because of it, had to reschedule for the following week. When I told Mr. Morales, he didn't say much, just gave me that look of his. "Don't make that a habit," he said. "Second chances don't come with thirds." A week later, I passed, scored high. I folded the paper slip and tucked it into my wallet like it was a medal, but the win felt heavy. Later that month, I was at the library printing class notes and decided to check my credit report just to see how bad things were. And there it was, a store card I'd never opened, sitting under my name, balance just over $1,450. Opened 5 months earlier, same address I'd just moved out of. My heart sank. My name, my social security number, my problem. I printed it out and went straight to the kitchen. Melissa was already there, headphones halfway on, studying in the corner. I dropped the paper in front of her. "That's not my debt," I said. She read it, jaw tightening. We can dispute this, and you need to send them a cease and desist letter. If they use your information again, it has to be on record." The next day, we sat at her firm's copier after hours and drafted it together. Clear, direct. Stop using my identity for any accounts or credit. She helped me get it notarized and mailed certified. Before I left, she said, "This isn't revenge, it's protection." Morales stood behind me, too. When I told him what was going on, he pulled out a wrinkled sheet of letterhead from his desk drawer. "Tell me what to write," he said. "I'll sign it. I've watched you clock in, work clean, meet every deadline. If it ends up in court, I'll say what I know." That same week, I filed a small claims case downtown. Walked through metal detectors, handed the clerk a folder with copies of my bank statements, identification, credit report, and a screenshot of the fraudulent card. She stamped everything and said, "You'll get a hearing date in about 8 weeks. That night, Mom texted me, "You're tearing this family apart over a piece of plastic. Hope you sleep well." 2 days later, Dad called from a blocked number. His tone was calm, too calm. "Just put the Netflix back," he said. "Your sister's stressed. You're overreacting. All this for what?" I hung up. Morales put me on steam table prep for the night shift. I stayed late, dicing carrots and celery until my hands cramped. He walked by, glanced at my cuts, and said, "Clean work. That's how you keep the line flowing." I asked him how to keep greens hot without turning them to mush. "No wasted motion," he said. "Season, taste, adjust. Stop second-guessing yourself. You already know when it's right." And for once, I believed that too. The nights were long, but they belonged to me. No judgment, no guilt texts, just work, prep, cook, clean, sleep. One evening, Melissa came by after her shift with a folder tucked under her arm and a cup of hot tea. Got bored, she said with a grin. Mocked up a few logos. Something simple, if you ever want to put a name to what you're building. I flipped through the pages of Melissa's folder. Sketches of logos, handwritten notes, doodles of forks and skillets, even a few font samples. It hit harder than I expected. I asked if she'd ever thought about starting her own thing. She shook her head. Not really. My mom used to tear apart everything I got excited about. I got good at not starting. We didn't dig any deeper. Just talked about sauces instead. Safe ground, solid ground. A couple of nights later, Owen texted me from a number I didn't recognize. Mom says you stole from us. I stared at that message for a long time. Thought about the phone bill, the overdue electric, the credit card in my name, the endless rides and schedules, all the years I carried their weight. I typed back, I didn't. You know me. That was it. No lecture, no defense, and I didn't wait for a reply. The sun hadn't even cracked the horizon when I pulled up outside the warehouse space in the Ohio City. My food containers were stacked in the back seat, taped and labeled tight. One by one, I carried them inside, arms shaking from both weight and nerves, and set up my station near the utility sink at the back table. My lineup: pulled chicken with tangy slaw, pierogi hash with hot honey, and roasted carrot salad with mustard vinaigrette. Morales handed me the keys to that corner. Don't overthink it, he said, just feed them. I taped my line diagram to the wall, labeled every tray, double-checked temperatures like it was a final exam. Melissa was up front organizing the sign-in table. She glanced at my setup, smirked, and said, You labeled the tongs? I shrugged. I like knowing where things belong. She grinned and tossed me a marker. You missed the sauce ladle. Get it together, chef. By 6:30, volunteers started rolling in. Neighbors from the hill, church members, and a few food bloggers with way too much camera gear. I kept my head down and worked clean. Hot food, full plates, wipe down, repeat. Then a volunteer tapped my arm. Hey, do we have a copy of the permit on site? City inspector might swing by. Someone said it's missing from the binder. My pulse spiked. Morales was in the back fixing a fryer and the binder was nowhere to be seen. I scanned the tables, trying to stay calm, but my stomach twisted. One missing document could shut the whole pop-up down. From across the room, Melissa caught the look on my face. She hurried over, already digging through her tote. Breathe, she said. You're covered. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside, copies of my ServSafe certificate, the pop-up notice, and the temporary health permit with today's date highlighted. I grabbed it with shaky hands. You had this ready? She smiled faintly. Got your back. Then she went right back to her post like it was no big deal. By mid-morning, the place was packed. Steam fogged the windows. Someone's Bluetooth speaker played a mix of soul and old-school R&B. The slaw was running low, so I whipped up another batch, heavier on the vinegar this time. Plates kept coming back clean. That's when I knew I was doing something right. Around 11:30, a guy from the local event board stopped by and announced they were adding a mini cook-off to the fundraiser. Comfort food category, quick vote, no entry fee. Just bragging rights. Morales clapped once and shouted across the kitchen, You in, Carter? I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I'm in. I already knew my dish. Pierogi hash with caramelized onions, diced kielbasa, and a drizzle of hot honey. Cleveland roots, but my spin. At the end of service, someone crackled over the mic to read off the winners. My hash took first. They handed me a small envelope, $3,000, a micro grant and a feature in the Scene magazine blog. I held that envelope like it might vanish if I blinked. Morales clapped me on the shoulder. You earned that, and don't you dare spend it on anybody's phone bill. I laughed. Short rough, but real. Message received. The buzz from the win hadn't even faded when I spotted him. Dad, standing too close to the coffee table in his old landscaping jacket, chatting up one of the church volunteers. I raised him, I heard him say. He owes us. Responsibility doesn't end just because you get a little attention. I was ready to step in, but before I could move, Ethan did. He just walked up beside me, arms folded, silent. His stare was enough. Dad turned, saw us both, froze mid-sentence, and walked out without another word. After cleanup, I sat on an overturned milk crate, hands sore, back stiff, grease under my nails. A guy from a nearby food truck walked over and said, "You the one who made that hash? If you ever want a Saturday guest slot, hit me up." "We'll split the tips," the guy said. "I run ribs and rice, could use some variety." I took his number without hesitation. 2 weeks later, I was up before sunrise, pulling into Gordon Square by 5:30 in the morning. We set up early and cooked rib tips and slaw till the smell filled the block. By 2:30 in the afternoon, we were sold out. People came back asking when I'd be there again. Somebody posted a photo of the pop-up on Instagram, me standing next to the chalkboard menu. Another kid tagged a napkin sketch with my name scrawled above a tiny house in Skillet, Carter's Small Kitchen. I saved it and set it as my phone wallpaper before I even left the truck. A few days later, Mr. Morales caught me in the walk-in cooler. The air was cold enough to sting. "Got a buddy in Slavic Village," he said. "He's renting out the place above his lunch joint. 1 bedroom. Cheap rent. Nothing fancy, but you'd be living over a kitchen. You serious about this?" "I'm serious," I told him. Didn't even have to think. Later that week, during another weekend event, I was handing out trays when I spotted a kid in a black hoodie near the back of the line. Head down, few crumpled dollars in hand. It was Owen. He didn't say anything at first, just looked around, taking it all in. Then, quietly, "That slaw's hitting hard. You make it." "Yeah," I said. He nodded, handed over his money, and took his plate. "Tastes better than what we got at home," he muttered, "just saying." Then he walked off before I could answer. But I watched him finish every bite. That night, I was driving Ethan's old Taurus since my own car was still in the shop. We rolled the windows down and let the night air wash over us. I had grease on my shirt, cash in my pocket, and a win that was mine alone. Ethan was laughing about some guy who tried to trade 3 pickles for a second plate. I laughed too. Couldn't stop, honestly. It felt good. It felt earned. A few days later, I hit a snag with paperwork. The school needed a certified birth certificate for my real ID and the final culinary enrollment form. I'd already registered for classes, but the registrar flagged it, no certified copy on file, just the faded scan I'd had for years. So I texted Mom, kept it short, need my birth certificate, state copy, real ID deadline. Hours passed before she replied. Must have filed it somewhere safe. I'll let you know when I find it. She didn't. A week went by. Then another. Nothing. Then, out of nowhere, one afternoon she texted, "Your last box is in the laundry room. I'll be out from 2 to 3. Doors unlocked. No greeting, no apology, no mention of the birth certificate, just logistics." But I understood what that meant. That 1-hour window was her way of avoiding me. And honestly, that was fine. I parked across the street, went in quietly, and didn't waste time. The box was right where she said, duct-taped sloppily, my name scrawled in faded Sharpie. I was halfway out the door when I glanced at the laundry shelf and saw it. That old plastic folder labeled insurance and taxes. Same spot it had always been, wedged between dryer sheets and paper files. I pulled it down. It felt heavier than I remembered. Inside was a stack of papers. The first one stopped me cold. Adoption final decree, printed in bold across the top. I flipped through the rest. There was an amended birth certificate, my same name, same spelling, but the issue date was years after I was born. Listed parents, Linda Miller and Gary Miller. Next page, an immunization record from a pediatric clinic in Youngstown, Ohio. Not Cuyahoga County. Not Cleveland. Youngstown. Then I found a Social Security document issued around the time I turned 5. I just stood there, staring at it all, hands numb. It's one thing to suspect, it's another to see it printed on state forms. Mrs. Sullivan's voice came back to me, our old neighbor. She'd said once, "You were so quiet when you first came to live with them," and then clammed up like she'd said too much. And Mom, every time I pushed back, every argument ended with the same line. "We saved you. You owe us." Now I knew exactly what she meant. I took pictures of every page, front, back, clear, time-stamped, then slid everything back into place exactly how I'd found it. Picked up the box, walked out, locked the door, and didn't look back, and look back. On the bus ride home, I texted Melissa. She met me at the basement that night. Didn't ask a single question when I opened the door. She just sat on the edge of the mattress, waited while I set the box down, and let me talk when I was ready. I handed her my phone and watched her scroll through the photos one by one. She didn't gasp, didn't comment, didn't rush to fill the silence. She just took it in. She looked up from the photos and asked softly, "You want me to help you call the county clerk?" Yeah, I said. I want the certified copy and I want whatever else they can tell me. Melissa nodded once, opened her laptop, and started typing. We'll request the non-identifying information. You're entitled to it, sealed or not. I watched my hands while she typed. I didn't feel much of anything. No anger, no sadness, just a kind of still waiting like my brain was catching up to reality. The next morning, we called the Cuyahoga County Clerk's office. I asked if they could confirm a foster to adopt case for a kid with my name, born the same year I was, adopted by Linda and Gary Miller. The woman on the line asked for ID, then put us on hold. Melissa muted the speaker and said quietly, "Whatever happens next, it's real now. No more guessing." 15 minutes later, the clerk came back. "The file's sealed," she said, "but active. Finalized when you were 4, right here in Cuyahoga County. The amended birth certificate lists Linda and Gary Miller as adoptive parents. That's all I can release." That was enough. More than enough. Back in Ethan's basement, I sat on the edge of the mattress, coffee cooling in my hands. The space heater hummed beside me, and the water pipe above clicked like it always did when someone used the upstairs bathroom. There's a world of difference between suspecting something and knowing it. Melissa didn't tell me she was sorry, didn't call it crazy. She just sat next to me and said, "What do you need to do next?" I didn't even have to think. Get the certified copy, finish enrollment, keep my head straight. She nodded. Then that's what we'll do. That night, I went to the kitchen and told Morales everything. Straightforward. No build-up, just the truth. He didn't flinch. "This isn't who you are," he said. "It's where you came from. Now you decide what comes next. You get to build your life, not repeat theirs." That night, I slept harder than I had in months. Not because things were better, but because the fog finally lifted. For the first time, the map made sense. I knew where I'd come from and where I wasn't going back. Then, early Sunday morning, my phone started buzzing, way too early for someone who never called first. "Dad, come have breakfast," he said. "Just you and me." I told him I'd meet, but not at the house. He suggested the diner by the river, the one near the train yard that hadn't changed in decades. Vinyl booths, metal napkin holders, coffee that always tasted like burnt cardboard. I got there first and grabbed a booth in the back. When he walked in, he was wearing the same navy hoodie he always wore for landscaping jobs, still dusted with dirt. He sat down without looking at a menu. The waitress poured our coffee and walked off. He took a sip, leaned back, and said, "The house is falling apart." I didn't respond. He went on. "Your mom's behind on the electric, the phone's cut off. Netflix is gone, the fridge broke, and we had to toss everything. Owen's missing school because he's driving Maya to practice. Their drowning cart." I stayed silent. Then he said the line I'd heard too many times, "We saved you, you know. Don't forget who raised you." I didn't forget, I said. I just know the truth now about the adoption, the amended certificate, all of it. He blinked once, surprised, but only for a second. Then his tone shifted. "Yeah, we did foster to adopt. Got a little help for a while. That's how it worked. Then the twins came along and things got tighter." He looked at me like that should have meant something, like I was supposed to be grateful. "We did what we could," he said finally. "I wasn't asking for an apology, and I didn't offer one either. You're asking me to come back and carry it all again," I said. He didn't deny it, just leaned forward, elbows on the table. "If you moved home, we'd help with your schooling. Rent-free, you'd have family support. We'd all benefit." "Support me how?" I asked. "With my paycheck? With my name on your bills again?" He frowned like I was exaggerating. "It'd be a trade-off. Everybody wins." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out 2 folded papers, sliding them across the table. One was the cease and desist letter Melissa had written. The other was my small claims filing, court date circled in red. "Stop using my name," I said. "Stop opening accounts with my information. Pay your own bills." Dad stared down at the papers like they were written in another language. Then he looked up and used the same line he always pulled when he lost control of the story. "You've always been ungrateful." I didn't rise to it. I just held his gaze and waited, quiet and steady, until he ran out of words. The waitress came by and asked if we wanted to order. I told her I'd just take the check. Dad didn't say another thing. 8 weeks later, just like the clerk had said, the court date came. I showed up with a binder, everything tabbed and labeled: credit reports, statements, screenshots, dates. Melissa waited outside the courtroom while I went in alone. Mom was there. She didn't speak. She cried quietly in the hallway before we went inside. But I didn't stop. I told the judge what happened, showed the proof, and kept my voice even. No emotion, no theatrics, just facts. The ruling came down clean. Full refund, card closed, debt voided. The judge stated the Millers weren't authorized users and that the account had been opened fraudulently. When I stepped out, Mom was still standing by the window. She reached out like she might touch my arm, then froze, turned away, and said nothing. I didn't either. I didn't need to. The next day, Morales handed me a small ring of keys wrapped in a folded takeout menu. Second floor, above the lunch joint in Slavic Village, he said. Tiny stove, walls need paint, vent rattles when it rains, but it's yours if you want it. You earned it. I told my buddy you'd pay on time. Don't make me a liar. I didn't. That first night, I unpacked my knife roll, hung a magnetic strip above the counter, and scrubbed until the air stopped smelling like fryer oil and old soup. Melissa started dropping by more often after that. At first, it was for logistics, planning the next fundraiser, organizing inventory lists, checking permit forms, refining recipes and batch counts. She kept me grounded whenever I started spiraling about portions or city inspectors. One night, she stayed late helping me sort packaging options for takeout orders. We sat on the floor surrounded by paper samples and menu drafts. When she finally stood to leave, she said, "You know you're actually doing it, right? You're building something real." I didn't say it out loud, but when she left, I looked around at the spotless counter, the neatly labeled bins, the quiet hum of the vent, and yeah, I believed it. The house back in old Brooklyn was still falling apart, but for once I wasn't buried under the wreckage. A month later, the twins' school held their spring awards night. The gym was packed, folding chairs, crepe streamers, those oversized laminated certificates they handed out like candy. I showed up on time, sat in the back row beneath a dying ceiling fan, and clapped when Maya got her leadership award for cheer. Clapped again when Owen was named most improved in junior varsity basketball. I planned to slip out right after. No small talk, no photos, no pretending. But before I could reach the door, a staff member flagged me near the water fountain. Middle-aged guy, polo shirt with the school logo stitched on the chest. "Your parents said you might want to say a few words," he said. Just as the older brother, maybe something about helping them, college plans, that sort of thing. I blinked. "No speech from me," I said. "Not tonight." I turned to leave, but Mom appeared before I could take 2 steps, like she'd been waiting for her cue. "Say something nice," she whispered through clenched teeth, steering me toward a small mic stand beside the sheet cake and a half-empty bottle of hand sanitizer. She held my elbow tight and smiled for the crowd. I looked at the mic, then at her, then at the twins behind her, trying to act invisible. I leaned in and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm proud of you, Maya and Owen. You've worked hard, and it shows. I'm building my own life now, but if either of you ever want a shift at my prep kitchen, I pay fair and on time. That's what I can offer." Mom's smile twitched. She laughed a little too loudly and added, "He's going to help with tuition too, of course." I looked back at the mic. "I'm not committing to that," I said, calm and direct. Then I stepped away. The silence that followed hit harder than I expected. A few parents suddenly checked their phones. One mom stared into her kid's snack cup like it held the meaning of life. Dad stood stiff by the drink table, jaw clenched tight enough to crack a tooth. The twins just stared at their plates, red-faced and frozen. I walked to the side exit and leaned against the wall, waiting for the air to clear. Maya came up first, arms crossed, voice low. "Mom shouldn't have done that," she said. "I didn't know she was going to pull that." "I believe you," I told her. She hesitated, then added quietly, "I might take one of those Saturday shifts. Been trying to save for books anyway." "Good," I said. "Just tell me which weekend." Owen was behind her, hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket. He didn't look angry, just empty, like someone had flipped his switch to stand by. "You good?" I asked. He nodded once, no words. They left together. I stayed behind a few extra minutes, long enough to avoid whatever storm was brewing in the parking lot. That weekend, I worked the flat top at the food truck guy's event in Gordon Square. The weather was awful, rain mixed with smoke, the air thick with the smell of wet charcoal. Still, we sold out. Every rib tip, every scoop of slaw. I didn't think about the school night. Not once during the rush. Not while I flipped meat, boxed sides, or counted tips with cold, stiff fingers. But when I got home, peeled off my soaked hoodie, and dropped onto the futon, I was out cold in minutes. Slept like I'd been hit by a hammer. Monday morning, I woke to a dozen new emails. The neighborhood paper had run a short story, just a few paragraphs. Fundraiser results, cook-off recap, micro-grant mention. At the very end, one line read, Carter's Small Kitchen, run by a Ho volunteer, served a crowd favorite, pierogi hash and slaw. No last name, no picture, just enough. I stood there in my little kitchen, fridge humming like a distant truck, and looked at the magnet board. I pulled out that napkin doodle one of the kids had given me, a fork beside a crooked little house, and pinned it dead center. That was mine. Didn't matter that it looked like middle school art. I stared at it the way I once stared at my first grocery store paycheck back in high school, $32 that felt like a fortune. It wasn't about the number, it was about proof. After that night, I made a list. Not dreams, not goals, just cleanup. First thing, shut down every utility account still in my name, phone, electric, internet, gone. I sent certified notices, tracked the receipts, made sure the end dates lined up. Anything that showed up afterward, a bill, a letter, anything. I wrote return to sender across the envelope in thick black marker and dropped it in the blue mailbox on the corner. A week later, the refund from the small claims case hit my account, $1,320 after fees. I moved half into savings and half into my equipment fund. No detours, no helping out. That money had a job now. Melissa helped me close out the fraud case completely. We filled out the official dispute forms, froze my credit, set up alerts, everything by the book. While we worked through the paperwork at my kitchen table, she said, boring wins are the best wins. Couldn't argue with that. She was right. A few days later, my tax refund cleared too. Clean deposit, first one in years without a single mystery charge or overdraft hold. I took the bus down to the west side and bought 2 used stainless prep tables from a cafe that had gone under. Hauled them back in a borrowed van, legs wrapped in tape like splints. Then I found a secondhand commercial blender on Craigslist. Called the guy twice to make sure it worked, paid cash, and lugged it up the narrow stairs to my apartment over the lunch shop. Nearly threw out my back, but it made it to the counter in one piece. Next, I registered a doing business as Carter's Small Kitchen and applied for a basic event permit. Morales signed off as my mentor. No hesitation. His signature meant more than a year's worth of, we're proud of you, from anyone else. That little one-bedroom above the Slavic Village lunch spot stopped feeling like a crash pad. It started to feel like home. I pushed the futon to the far wall and set up the prep tables under the window. At night, when the street went quiet, I could still hear the hum of the lunch spot's vent below, steady and low like white noise. It was better than silence. It meant work was getting done. Then one Saturday, Maya texted, "Still need weekend help?" I said yes. Gave her simple prep tasks. Wash produce, label containers, stack trays, nothing fancy. And I didn't hover over her. She did it all. No attitude, no shortcuts. I handed her a small white envelope of cash at the end of the shift. No promises, no guilt attached. Owen showed up the next weekend. No text, just knocked, hoodie up, quiet. I handed him a dish towel and pointed at the sink. He didn't complain, didn't ask why, just worked. We barely talked, but when our eyes met, he didn't look away. That was enough, for now. Then one rainy Thursday, Melissa showed up at my door with a suitcase and a few taped-up boxes from her mom's place. She didn't give a speech or ask if it was okay. She just walked in, set her suitcase down by the futon, and said, "Dinner's on me, if you're fine with pasta and canned sauce." We boiled the water, split the jar, and ate on prep stools in the kitchen, plates balanced on upside-down mixing bowls. Afterward, I cleared out a drawer in the dresser and didn't say a word about it. She noticed. That was enough. The next morning, we put up a magnet board. Orders on one side, bills on the other. I stood there staring at it for a full minute. Everything had a place. Nothing was burning down. Morale stopped by that weekend with a box of extra quart containers. He peeked around the kitchen and said, "You've got a shot, Carter. Keep it about the food and the books. Don't lose yourself in anything else." I won't. I told him. And for the first time, I actually believed it. A few days later, 2 certified envelopes showed up in the mail, one from the county clerk, a certified copy of my birth certificate, the other from family court, the finalized adoption decree. I didn't frame them, didn't light a candle or make a speech. I just slid them into a fireproof envelope, sealed it, and tucked it under the sink, next to the receipts, the vendor permit, and the spare keys for the blender. That's where the important stuff lived now, close enough to reach, far enough not to trip over. 2 days later, my phone started ringing again. Unknown number. I ignored it. Same number called the next morning, and again that night. On the 5th try, I answered. "You're cold," Mom said. No greeting, no question, just that. "I'll meet you in public," I said. Neutral ground, or not at all. She didn't argue, just texted a time and place, a coffee shop near the RTA red line. Neutral enough. They were already there when I walked in, sitting across from each other like they were about to negotiate a contract. Dad looked worn out. Mom had her coat draped over the chair like she planned to stay a while. I sat down but didn't order anything. Dad leaned forward first. "Come home." "No," I said. No hesitation. He looked at Mom, then back at me. "The twins need help. The house is falling apart." "I know what the house needs," I said, "but I'm not the solution to it." I paused, then added, "I'm grateful you took me in. I don't forget that, but I won't bankroll your house or babysit your life. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're the reason this doesn't keep burning." Mom crossed her arms. "We thought you'd understand." Her tone was flat, eyes dry. Then came the old line. "We saved you." I stood up. "I'm grateful you took me in," I said again, louder this time. "But gratitude isn't servitude." Neither of them followed me out. A week later, Owen texted me. Short, just one sentence. "We're actually doing chores now. I get why you left. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen, then typed back, "Proud of you." Shifts open this weekend. That night, Melissa came home with a tiny plant in a plastic pot, one of those grocery store succulents that barely need watering. She set it by the window between the spice rack and the extra roll of paper towels. We ate leftover slaw and watched a game on the old TV we'd found on Facebook Marketplace. It still had someone's name written in Sharpie on the remote, but it worked fine. The magnet logo, the little fork next to the crooked house, finally peeled off the fridge. I didn't throw it out. I traced it onto a blank sticker sheet, cut it clean, and pressed it onto the inside of the door, just above the light switch. No spotlight, just mine. That night, I loaded Cambros into the trunk for a catering job at a church hall. 3 trays of roasted vegetables, 2 racks of pulled chicken, sauces sealed and labeled tight. I locked the door, shut off the lights, and stood in the quiet for a moment. No whispered demands through the vents. No dirty dishes stacked high, no schedule built for someone else's life. The calendar on the wall now showed only my orders, my invoices, and Melissa's class schedule. That was the house now, not fancy, not perfect, just real. So tell me, what would you have done in my place? Gone back out of family duty, or drawn the line and started over? Drop a comment below, even just a good story. Tell me your take, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Huge for me, easy for you. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.